Creating from the Heart, the Artistry of Living. I'm Suzy Vance, and I'm here with Larry Brechner.
Otherwise known as Lab sometimes. To some
Lab, yes, there you go. So, Larry.
Yes.
Let me tick off the number of things you've done in your life. He is now doing something called Art on the Air for PBS out of...
Well, for Lakeshore Public Media, and it's also on WVLP. It actually started at WVLP, was our start station. We did it live there, and then sent the recording over to Lakeshore. So it is on NPR. It's in the top of arts, NPR Tops program in the top 25. Actually, we got up to number 2 once. And we're in the best hour-long shows for podcasts, too. So it's rated there. And we recently got a Communicators Award for one of our episodes, an interview with B.J. Lederman. And you NPR fans should probably know who B.J. Lederman is. He wrote most of the theme music you hear from the NPR shows, Morning Edition, all the different shows that you hear, Marketplace and everything like that. He's a real card anyway. He's a lot of fun.
Well, he matches you then.
I guess, yeah. But he's more of a card than I am, probably.
So, Larry.
Yes.
How did you get into this?
Well, I've been involved with Lakeshore as a pledge show since 1993, doing live, pledge calls at 75656 right now, and you can have whatever we're pledging. And I continue to do that. In about 2000, they dragged me on the board also. I don't represent a lot of money like some of our board members, but I am a zealot. Someone described me in an interview yesterday.
A zealot?
A zealot for the station. So I've been involved with them since then. So that's, almost 30-some years. I'm currently board chair. And so we have a new CEO, and he's doing wonderful with the station. We're doing a lot more outreach with Lakeshore overall as both a NPR and PBS outlet. So, and actually, my undergraduate and master's degrees in broadcasting, even though my life was in theater. I worked in theater all my life. But those 2 degrees actually are in broadcasting. So it really wasn't much of a stretch.
No, and you do it naturally.
Well, it's talking and listening. We did an interview yesterday with a gentleman talking about non-for-profits. It's the second interview we've done with him. But after my co-host, Esther Golden, and I were talking, we barely had to tee him up. We gave him a few things, and he was
he just ran with it.
And he just ran with it. And of course, it was a second interview with us, so he kind of knew the format. And so our format is we do 2 23-minute interviews usually, and then we do a 7-minute spotlight on most of the events focused in Northwest Indiana. And how the show is developed since then is we look at the arts locally, but we also bring arts in. So we bring art, and we have a very broad definition of art. It can be arts, culture, things like that. So some of the interviews we've done, we just passed our 6th anniversary, starting our 7th season, and we had Felix Cavallari from The Rascals. And his manager actually reached out to us because he's also got a new album. Great interview, but in his case, we did a whole show with him, but we also had 4 songs. And when I do a show like that, what we do is we don't do the songs while we're talking. I said, and now this is Felix Cavallari and doing a song I'm sure you remember from 1967, Groovin'. Pause. And that was and then I insert that. I added all that later. So so we have the nice fade-ins under the voice as we go in and out. So
this is great.
And of course, that goes back to my recording studio days. So I ran a small recording studio way back in probably, late 70s and into the 80s and such like that, which is how I got into become a voting member for the Grammys. And it was kind of a backdoor way. I was watching the 23rd Grammy Awards, and Christopher Cross Sailing won 6 Grammys. That's a great song, but I thought, 6 Grammys? So I said, what is required to become a member? And you had to have, at that time, a single side of an album that you were creatively involved with, or 6 singles. Well, I had done some mostly demo recordings, but the one was actually released, a couple of them was, and anyway, I said, well, send me an application. So $50 later and approval, I'm a member of the Grammys, so I decided to go. In the 24th Grammys,
yay!
Somehow they stuck me row 24, row 13, not dead center, but I was still with quite a few celebs. I mean, here's little me with a 4-track recording studio. Hi, Larry from Chicago. And then you go to this party afterwards where everyone's at, and one of the most interesting people, I ran into a lot of people, but I don't think anything great about me. I just meet them on a handshake, and I don't take pictures and I don't do autographs. If you don't believe me, I don't care. But the most interesting person I talked to was Pierre Cossette, the executive producer of the show, because it's amazing being a theater person, watching him do a live television show and then also doing the actual thing there, the components. The amazing part was when they went to commercial, you hear the orchestra play da 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 da, and as soon as they went to commercial, music stopped, everyone's out of their seat walking around. And then they come back from commercial, and people are still kind of in their seats scrambling back. And of course, they do a close-up shot. Those few years that I went there was John Denver was the host. And you go back, now we're going on to the next category, and you're tight on him as people are scrambling to get back. And I went for several years, and it was kind of, and it wasn't much exciting. Now that same member ticket is $250 just to go to the cheap seats, and then another $250 to go to the party afterwards. So. But when I joined, there was only about 5,000 members in the Academy. So it's ironic, yesterday I just finished voting in the first round. And I go through some of the categories anymore. It's like, who are these people? Even when we get the final vote, it's like, I like to see, I'm with it a little bit. But I voted for a lot of people that actually been on the show. And I figure, okay, well, you get my vote for that. So we've had several people like we recently had David Arkenstone, and most people won't recognize that name, but you've heard his music, his new age music. He was at Windhill Records, Narada, people who play Warcraft. He's done most of the music for that, and he had a new album called Quest for the Runestone, and it's almost like it should be a film soundtrack. But anyway, his son wrote like a little book for it. But anyway, his manager reached out to us and wanted to be on our show. So,
great. So tell me, when you were a kid, did you think you'd be doing this?
Well, actually, as a kid,
what were the seeds?
Well, I always felt creative. My mom was a church musician. She played organ. Yeah. She played cowbells, actually, musical cowbells. So, and I think her vision for me was always to be like a church music leader and everything. And so I age 5, studied piano. Then I moved to organ, then trumpet. And so years later, I always thought I was going to be in science because, well, with my initials, lab, I was like, okay, lab. And I always had a very strong interest in science. And of course, I'm a pilot, so I'm interested in that. So all those because I had a real technical background. As that worked out is I got involved in school in technical theater, lighting design and things like that. And then, of course, recording and the sound thing. So it just sort of did that. And when I got to college, I was enrolled in engineering, and I took the integrated calculus and analytic geometry. I hadn't had calculus in high school. And math was never my super strong suit. Geometry was fine, but, algebra is like, why, So I got out of that class before I failed it. And then I kind of just went through my basics until I got into communications, and I thought, this could be my home. I'm a communicator. And
yes,
so
you are.
I kind of did want to get a theater degree, but I also was working full time and went to Purdue, then Calumet, now Northwest in Hammond. And so I kind of went on the slow course to finish that. And then a few years later, in 1979, the school system in Highland, where I went to high school, by the way, they had a position open for auditorium director. And this was before I even finished my degree. So technically I was hired as auditorium supervisor. They couldn't call me director until I finished a year later. But anyway, I was there for 13 years. I took the 2 separate programs, which were kind of fighting with each other, the choral musical and the drama club, and merged that into the Highland Theater Company, because I'm a us person, not a them us.
Either or. No.
Right, and there was kind of this whole difference between I didn't like that. So I brought that together. We ended up doing usually 2 musicals a year and at least 1 or 2 straight plays. And then my wife was involved with me on that. And then I was starting to do some freelance work at the Center for Visual Performing Arts. And they eventually made me an offer to come there and be their theater administrator, production manager, and help in the development of their professional theater company. So I was there for 6 years and doing quite a bit of shows. And then the school system in Munster came along, and they had just renovated their 1,000-seat auditorium, and they wanted to put a professional face on it. And so, which actually ended up being great because it then bridged my retirement money from previously in there. Which ended up being nice. But anyway, I was classified there as an administrator, and I had some other duties outside of that, but we ended up doing a production schedule. Again, I had kind of the same thing when I first went there, merging the two. There wasn't quite the conflict, but as you know, I changed the name there to Munster Theater Company.
You sound like you're pretty good at merging ideas.
Well, I like that. And I also like the us thing, okay, let's work together. Let's don't have this, that, separate.
Yeah.
And anyway, long story short, I went there. We ended up doing 2 musicals a year, usually 2 straight plays. Usually the straight plays were fully student directed. I produced them. There was a whole process for the student to become a director. I mean, it was not it wasn't like, okay, you're it. It wasn't like they were like student director under me. They had to, there was that position where a student director would work with me, kind of like an assistant type thing. My wife also worked with me on the musicals, but she then became the middle school director, changed the name to the Wilbur Wright Theater Company. So she did 2 shows, and then we made a feeder program where they did on our stage. Our production staff helped them out, and usually she would have like a couple of my high school people be their like student director. The ideal is in usually the winter show, or her winter show, is that student director would probably become the student director for our novice show at the high school. So all of our incoming people would have that person.
Right in.
It didn't always work that way, but that was kind of the idea. They already had someone they worked with, and the novice show was restricted to freshmen and sophomores, or juniors and seniors who have never been on stage before, or we bent that rule a bit if they maybe appeared in chorus once but really never had a big role. The idea is that you get them in the door to do theater, and of course theater meaning all the production aspects of it too. Now, so it's not just performing and everything like that. So the parallel organization I had both at those places was the auditorium staff, and it worked like a job. You came in as an apprentice, you worked. Generally, we work what we call the house, which is ushering and things like that. But then once you got to full crew status after usually 20 to 40 hour apprenticeship, you could then start applying for assistant level jobs, director, manager. So it worked hierarchy. On the commercial shows, at Munster, we had anywhere from 15 to 20 commercial shows, rental shows every year. Well, the upper level people got paid, but to get to that status, you had to do that. And you were in charge of an area, so you had a production manager that was over all that. The house manager did their area, technical director, and all the things, because I can't be everywhere at once. And it worked like a job. I always told them, I said, first of all, we always talked about the P word. P being professional. I said, professional is not getting paid, it's delivering a quality product every time. And like I said on our shows, I said, I want opening night to be as good as closing. It might get better, tighter as you do with shows mature, but I said,
it has to be at least as good.
Don't think on closing night you're gonna pull some shenanigan like, oh, it's closing night, so I'm gonna do. I said, you'll be done in theater here. I said, deliver the same product you do on opening night and closing night. And same thing when we deal with people. I says, you may be a student, but now when you're working for me, you are staff. And I said, I want to impart that. So like I would have student house managers who had problems with people in the auditorium who had to deal with them. And I mean, I would back them up if they came to a real serious issue. But like, people want to push their way in, at an inappropriate moment of opening doors, you have to wait for a break. And that usually worked. You train people. And one of the things I got when I went to the center is when we first there was sort of this thing where people could flow in. They usually had an 8 o'clock start time for shows. Came in at 8:10, 8:20, but so I made an on-time start policy unless there was something with our fault, like parking or things like that. So if people first came in, do you know who I am? No, I know who I am, and you're not getting until an appropriate break in the show. And then people got trained. They would show up late, and they said, we know, we'll wait, that's fine. And that was before they did the outer vestibule at the center, which they added. I wish we had that when I was there, because when you open the door, it's just, it's 7 rows deep theater, and it's like very disruptive.
So let me ask you this question, because it's running around in my mind. I heard you say, you were a pilot.
Yes.
Where does that fit in this?
Well, I've always wanted to fly. It's my way of getting high, so it's and I
approve.
Right. I'm not current, but I sometimes I'd put it on the back burner. I actually got my instrument rating, and I got a commercial license, which means I could fly for hire. People think, commercial license, you're going to be an airliner. No.
You could have flown for
and I really wanted to actually, and I kind of ran out of money to do this. I was actually thinking of maybe going into flying, because in the late 80s, they were really begging for pilots, and I thought, maybe I could do that too. I'd be happy, and so I was kind of working. But then we had that little mini recession, and the military had been giving re-enlistment and bonuses to the pilot to keep them, had reversed that and just kind of washing all the guys out. So there was a pool of pilots that had been flying jets and had thousands of hours. And I thought, okay, this is not going to happen. So, but I did get those ratings on my ticket.
Do you keep it up? Do you keep your ticket up, current?
Well, I'm not current right now. And all I really need to do is, you don't lose your license. You just have to go get checked out. I would just get what's called a third-class medical. In fact, I haven't had a third-class medical, so I have to do that once, which I'll pass. and then you just have to recertify you're fine to fly. If I want to fly for hire, then I have to go for something different. But anyway, that's something, now that I'm retired, I'm going to try to squeeze back into.
You are retired?
Well, I'm retired from my job.
Okay.
You know, when I worked for the school system, I
Yes.
retired in 2016.
Yes.
And
Because you don't strike me as retired.
no, because as soon as I left the school system, that was just before we started Art on the Air, IUN contacted me. They had just renovated their theater. And I didn't really want to get into a full-time job. I said, well, I'll come in and help you set up like the thing as a rental space. But I ran into a lot of bureaucracy where I usually worked in most places. I was kind of king in my own kingdom. It's like, oh, we have to check with Bloomington on that. Oh, yeah. And I'm like, so I stayed there for 18 months and I kind of set a template for it. I developed a contract. Or what was funny is Bloomington wanted us to set up a Ticketmaster outlet right away. I said, we have no clients. You know, I said, we have to have a staff person to run this. We have to pay the fees for Ticketmaster. I said, and what they were ultimately worried about is where the money's going to go when these outside groups come in. I said, well, here's how I handled it at where I worked in the school system. We didn't do their box office. We let them internally do their own box office. So the money is internal. We don't touch it. They just pay the rental fee and our staff fees.
That's fabulous, because then you don't have to be accountable.
Right. And so they said, oh, well, we can buy that, I said, if we ever get to be like what you're doing down there in, Bloomington, where you're doing these huge, well, I said, that might be a different conversation. I said, this building just got opened. And I said, that we don't know if there are going to be that many clients. And there's some problems with parking there till, just like any university, there's not really good parking. So, and if you have events. But anyway, I helped them set up that template, and I stayed for about 18 months to do that.
So Larry, what's next? Because you seem to be a master at retiring.
Yes.
Meaning, retiring just means getting a new set of wheels.
This is true.
Retiring.
Well, I live a life, if anyone's familiar with the musical Pippin, Bertha, who's the grandmother, and she in song, she's singing to Pippin, her grandson, a line that I believe, if I refuse to grow old, I will stay young till I die. So I just hope to keep going.
There you
over
go.
the last. It's like, I don't know if there's a next. Art on the Air takes quite a bit of time. It takes about 25 hours a week is my best guess. Tuesdays we do interviews. Tuesday and Wednesdays I do editing. Today then, our Spotlight interview also is a standalone segment that Lakeshore airs on Wednesday. I produce like a graphic for them. They put it out, and then they put it out on their thing, which then I spend, this morning I did sharing to like all the people that were involved, to special sites. Like it was about Michael McDermott's concert that's at Memorial Opera House. So I did that. And then when I go home today, I'm going to finish editing and posting a show. After I get a show, I post it on our website. I send it to Lakeshore site, and we usually are about 3-4 shows ahead of the actual air dates. Post it to Spotify, post it on audio.com, and then every weekend I deliver to the 2 stations, Lakeshore and WVLP, what I call the show package.
Yeah.
On Thursday, usually in the evening, I push out what the show is going to be that weekend. Every week I make a short little 30-second video. We call it the billboard. This week on Are There, we have that part's 20 seconds. That drops into the end. I have two of those promos for each of the stations with their ending, and then I put that into a video, and the video has the graphics and everything. And so on Thursday, I put out like the Facebook and the push like that. After the WVLP airs on that, I put out another push for the Lakeshore. And then Monday, and throughout the week, we're doing, like, when I get off today, I'm going to go back and I need to talk to a couple of people we're talking about having as guests. And
Nice.
so that's fine.
You have an adventurous life.
It is. It's fun.
Meet new people all the time.
We do, and they're fun. The gentleman we had on yesterday, which we had before, he's written a book, which I would suggest, it's not out yet. It's called Scene Change, but the second book, Scene Change 2. And it's about especially targeted to arts and theater nonprofits. And it says, nowhere in the 501c3 C thing exists a thing for arts. You're supposed to do something as a charity. And it's fine if you're going to do art for the sake of art, but it's supposed to do something for your community. And, the IRS says it's not going to come after you. There's great abuses at a larger level. And he gave an example years ago, this one symphony, they were doing things. They decided they need to reach out to their community, so they would go out with small ensembles to like concerts that they would do under an overpass for homeless people, or unhomed people, I guess is the new term, where they would set up, but they'd also bring all these social service people with them. And so they would then like an intermission and after they said, was there anything we can get you? So that became like their main mission as a charity. So the city that was at, I can't remember what city, I think it was in California, actually then started supporting the symphony because it was part of that whole process. That's really what all arts and theater organizations should do. It's not just art for the sake of art.
Right.
That's okay if you want to be you don't have to be a profit to do that. You could be a regular commercial entity and do that. But you know, there's a whole anyway. The second book is aimed at boards and how to as a board determine if you're really truly doing that mission and how you do it better. Or you know what. And I know that's a discussion that made me think about on the Lakeshore board. Of course, we exist as a nonprofit, but we do a service to the community in that we. As Northwest Indiana is going to be going into my pitch, 700,000 some people, and we deserve our own public radio and TV station because we live in the shadow of Chicago, so we know all about. So we do have that mission. Our current CEO has done this thing called Building Blocks, which is about early childhood education. He's brought other people in. We're doing a 6-part documentary. We brought in key people about that, and then we also are bringing them in to kind of reach out to the community. So one, we will get hopefully income coming in from that, not as income to spend, but to expand. So we really have a community mission there. And then Building Blocks, I think down the road, after we do early childhood development and education, we might move on in that same scenario with something else. So,
awesome.
So that in some ways we are all doing really what we are in this book, what you described, is we're really reaching out to our community and being a true charity. So
congratulations.
Yeah.
I love it. You're a work in progress.
Always, you know, and then with photography, sometimes I listen to like our area artist meeting that, of course, it was last night, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm still doing stuff, but I don't have as much time for that sometimes.
Isn't that the truth?
I mean, I did.
You can get really tied up in nonprofit stuff to the extent that you forget what some of the things you really
doing.
love.
I know. I
Not to say that you don't love the nonprofit.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I was sitting before I came here too also and thinking, okay, I want to, you know, maybe pull a new picture out that I haven't edited. I have some great photos that have never been exhibited, so I consider it new work, even though I might have put it on Facebook.
You should.
And
okay.
And so the one I was looking at is this heron, a really good shot of the heron actually catching a fish. And my wife was saying, "But you've done herons before." I said, "Yeah, but I've never exhibited this one." And I said, plus the firm that I deal with has on sale the 20 by 30, which is one of the.
There you go.
On sale. I said, you know, I might take advantage of that. So I'm going to work on that also today or tomorrow before the deadline. But yeah, I mean, fortunately I just had another picture in the salon show, which I'm grateful to be in because I understand that there were like 400 people that submitted things or 400 works. And there was like 70 people that got accepted. So I'm like thrilled. And of course you're in the salon show too, in a way. You know that, right?
No.
Your picture's in the salon show.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, your portrait.
Not a picture.
Well, your great portrait.
An oil painting.
Right, beautiful. And so an award-winning one. She won the top prize for that. Yes. That's fantastic.
It is amazing how what she does is just amazing.
It is. So anyway, yeah, photography is, you know, I still do that. I haven't been on the kayak as much this time because shooting anything. And so it's like, yeah, it's the only couple times I've been on the lake is with my grandson. He likes to go in the kayak with me, and you know,
good.
he
Keep
loves,
it up.
He likes to put his fingers in the water. I said, you may not want to do that. You know, we have snapping turtles in this. I said, they might think that that's something to eat, though. I said, I don't want them snapping your fingers off or anything, but yeah. So yeah, being a grandparent, we've had grandkids that are already grown, but they were never close. My one daughter lived in Kentucky, so we saw them every so often. I have what we call our pseudo son. He's a retired captain of the Navy, and he traveled all over. He was actually a former student of mine who adopted us when he went to the Norwich Military Academy, and he's a pilot too. So when I was working my instrument rating, he would be my safety pilot because what you do is you have to put in so many hours flying under the hood. And so I would have him as a safety pilot. I did my instrument rating backwards, by the way. I did those hours first, and then I went to the instructor because I also it was a ground instructor. You know, I had my ground instructor rating, so I really knew what to do. It just had to. You have to put it. You have to put in 40 hours, 20 with and everything. In fact, the guy who was my flight instructor. These were a bunch of guys from Norway and Sweden, and they were here to get enough hours to become airline transport guys. And so the guy who was my flight examiner, who lived on that, we thought we would tease him. And so we went and did my test and everything. And anyway, and he actually, during the flight test, he actually did what's called a talk down, where I was under the hood all the way to touchdown. He says, I don't do that with everybody. He says, and Griffith Airport's a very narrow runway. It's a really strange feeling. You're looking at your controls, you know you're close, and all of a sudden, boom, you're touchdown. So we decided we want to tease the instructor. So he goes in first and says, oh man, he missed the L cart and he was over in. Oh no, he's so good. And then we both broke out laughing because we were teasing him that. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, I don't know what if there is a next. I mean, something might come up. I mean, the board.
If it does, you'll be aware.
Oh, I know. I'll
you
jump in.
listen.
I know. Well, that's the trick, especially like you're doing an interview here and. With our interviews, the trick is listening. Not if I always tell Esther, sometimes she gets excited and wants to get a question. I said, if they're talking, let them talk. Unless they're really off the subject or something, let them talk. I said because that makes good radio. I always say that to my wife when I go to my studio, because I was in my photo studio in the back there. I also have what's now my radio studio. But then I do my editing on my computer downstairs in our family room, so I can still sit with my wife. Once in a while, I'll have one ear on a headphone. And one of my tricks of editing is I first of all, I make notes when, like, if there's a talk over or something like that, or yeah. So then I go backwards through the thing and say, okay, take that. Because if you take it from the front, then it changes all the other times. So I do that. And then once I do that, I then will listen to it mostly at 1.5 speed. Now that there's and I'll just kind of listen to it. And then you can catch something. Okay, something's not right there. Go back and play. And that's how I'll edit. And then I'll kind of do a general playthrough to make sure it's fine, and then get the segment together. And so that's my editing process. And
I love it.
You work it out. So
yes, you work it out just like you work out your life.
it is,
That's
and it's a good life. And of course, where we live in our little shack on the lake, there is kind of nice.
That's great.
But
Thank you for sharing.
Oh, I'm glad to do it. Glad we didn't have the fan on this time.
I know, this is great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Suzy.
Creating from the Heart, the Artistry of Living. This is Larry Brechner. Be sure and catch him on Art on the Air.
7 o'clock on Sunday night, or on WVLP at 11 a.m. But you can always download us either at brech.com/AOTA or go to the Lakeshore Public Media website. Do that. We had this last month 500 downloads from there alone. So
Oh, great. Okay, see you next time.